Okay, it being 5:30 of the hour, I will call this regular council meeting of the town of Fort Francis to order. I'd like to welcome everyone in the gallery, and I would like to welcome everybody watching at home. Thank you. This is session number 52, and we'll begin with a territorial acknowledgement. We begin by acknowledging that we are within Treaty 3 territory, and that the land on which we live and work is the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe people and the homeland of the Métis Nation. As taught by a Treaty 3 Ojibwe elder, when we speak about the land, we recognize that we are the land. The land is all of us, both Indigenous and non-Indigenous. The land is a collection of our history, our current experiences, and our future together. We offer this land acknowledgement in the spirit of reconciliation, recognizing the historical and contemporary impacts of colonialism while committing to working together as Indigenous and non-Indigenous people to build a better future. Item number 3, disclosure of pecuniary interest and the general nature thereof. Councillors, Councillor McTaggart.
Thank you, Your Worship. On item 9.1 this evening, the David G. Bogosian Integrity Commissioner report on complaint, Councillor David Kircher. After consultation with the Integrity Commissioner, D. Bogosian, has been determined that I do not have a pecuniary interest in the matter before us this evening, but I do feel I have a moral interest in the matter, and therefore I'll be stepping aside for that one agenda item this evening.
Thank you, Councillor McTaggart. Anyone else? Seeing none. Item number 4, delegations. There are none. Item number 5, presentations. 5.1 is our recreation master plan, and is someone online? H.T. Lamb. So H.T. Lamb is online, and Mr. Lamb, you can take it away.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good evening, members of council, Mr. Mayor, members of town staff and the public. We like to, we're representing R.J. Burnside in the presentation for the Recreation Master Plan for Fort Francis. With me, my colleague, Cole Roddick, is the recreation planner, and my staff in the development of this program through the last few months. So I would like to begin the presentation to thank members of council and staff for this opportunity to help with the investigation and also preparation of this master plan going forward. So I would imagine that you would have had the opportunity to review the report prior to this meeting. And I just want to let you know that Fort Francis has very strong bones, which means a great compilation of assets, indoors and outdoors, that would chart the future of Fort Francis. This report is based on a 10-year projection and with some recommendations and advice to help move forward with the master plan. Just in closing, before I hand the podium over to Cole, is that as we conclude the project, I also noticed that there are developers actively pursuing the redevelopment of the mill site in the west end of the town, and I think that would become a very important economic and also employment catalyst for the municipality. So with that, I will pass the lectern over to Cole to walk you through the slides.
Thanks, HT. I'm just getting the slideshow set up to share. I just have to be able to share my screen there. So hello, Mr. Mayor, members of council, staff, and members of the public. As HT mentioned, I'm Cole. I helped prepare this master plan, and I just wanted to thank you for your time tonight for this presentation. And in a moment here, I'll share my screen and we can begin the slideshow. So, what is a recreation master plan? So the recreation master plan, or RMP for short, establishes a vision and goals for existing future recreation and culture facilities and programming. The purpose of the master plan is to improve the recreation and cultural landscape of the town over the next 10 years. Project timeline. So this slide provides a chronological overview of the project. We began investigating the existing conditions of the town, reviewing existing facilities and programming. We then held various forms of community consultation to solicit input from a variety of community members, undertook a SWOT analysis and programming assessment, reviewed policies and background documents of relevance to the RMP, and identified our key recommendations and finalized the RMP. Moving forward will be the implementation of the 10-year plan. Community consultation took the form of an online community survey, interviews, and discussion groups, as well as 2 public open houses, one during the day at the high school for youth and one in the evening for the public, both of which were well attended. Some key themes that emerged from the consultation are the following. Diverse recreational landscape. So it was revealed that there are diverse interests in recreational and cultural preferences amongst community members. Facility utilization and enhancement. During consultation, it was consistently echoed that existing spaces should be optimized prior to considering the development of new facilities. Inclusive and accessible programming and facilities. There's a strong theme for inclusive programming and facilities, so that's bringing facilities up to AODA standards. Community engagement and inclusivity. Again, there's a strong desire amongst the public for community engagement and inclusivity in recreational and cultural opportunity decision making. Facility maintenance and partnerships. Collaborative efforts in terms of maintenance challenges, financial considerations, and cost recovery was emphasized throughout the consultation, with partnerships emerging as a potential solution. Community and connectivity. There's a desire amongst community members for ongoing connectivity solutions for trails, sidewalks, and active transportation network connecting facilities throughout Fort Frances. And finally, new facilities and programming to consider. So community members identified a variety of new or additional facilities and programs that could be considered, which includes, but it's not limited to, dog park, additional bike trails, and indoor turf sports. This slide identifies some findings from consultation efforts, as well as highlights some utilization rates of boat slips, ice pads during prime time, the pool, and programming. So as you can see, there's substantial utilization of the facilities shown on the slide, but there are still some hours remaining available for use. This slide just is an overview of all existing town facilities within Fort Frances, showing just the widespread distribution throughout the community. Now we'll jump into the recommendations that were identified within the master plan. We'll begin with the short-term recommendations, and I should note that the recommendations are grouped into 4 categories: programming, facilities, communication, and budget staffing. So for the short-term facility recommendations, the first one is enhancing and establishing public washroom facilities. This recommendation is noted in the short term, the midterm, and the long term, as it's an ongoing recommendation. Identify and repurpose underutilized facilities, undertake general building and site accessibility improvements, so ramps, washrooms, walkways, etc. Improve accessibility to all municipal facilities, including parks and pathways, install bicycle parking infrastructure to encourage active transportation users, explore repurposing or the closure of Kiwanis Sunny Cove Camp. For programming, identify and streamline underutilized programs, identify multi-program opportunities for existing municipal facilities to optimize utilization and bookings. So an example would be multiple court lining solutions for racket sports on non-competitive courts, and enhance cultural programming. For communication, manage public messaging and expectations regarding program appropriation and streamlining. So this would include the removal of underutilized programs, and promote youth engagement initiatives. budget and staffing, reallocate operative budget from underutilized facilities towards capital programs and facility improvements, and provide staffing flexibility for optimal service levels. Now we'll move into the midterm recommendations. So for facilities, enhancing and establishing public washrooms, again, explore lighting and irrigation systems for outdoor fields to extend daily bookings, optimize ice pad utilization at the Memorial Sports Center. For programming, promote nature-based recreation and culture opportunities, virtual programming expansion, and expand children and youth programming. Communication, standardize signage and wayfinding with a singular town brand, and encourage community-led events. Finally, moving into the long-term recommendations, for facilities, enhancing and establishing public washroom facilities still, consider a community gardens expansion, cultural infrastructure enhancement, explore the establishment of an indoor multi-use facility or the leasing of a school gym. For programming, establish cultural exchange programs, and for budget and staffing, improve active transportation infrastructure. Here you can see a chart showing all the recommendations and their associated timing. The general timelines shown have been recommended to allow for various stages of implementation while ensuring the continued delivery of recreation and culture services and amenities. And that's it. Thank you. Thank you for your time and for the opportunity to work on this project and present. It's definitely an exciting project for the community, and I know we're excited to see how it progresses over the coming years. If anybody has any questions, HT and I are happy to answer them.
Thank you for that presentation, Cole and HT. I'll go to the councillors now and see if they have any questions. Councillors, any questions or comments? Seeing none? I'll just make a quick comment. I want to thank both Cole and HT for the work on this, as well as the entire Burnside group. The entire report, which is quite lengthy, will come up later on the council agenda, and it's a really interesting report, a very in-depth report, and I think we got some great value for the money that we spent on this. So thank you very much, Burnside Group.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Moving on to correspondence, 6.1. We have correspondence from the Royal Air Cadet Squadron, and I just want to briefly speak to it. It's an invitation to attend their ceremonial review, which is on June 12th at 6:30. And councillors, I encourage you, if you haven't gone, to go. I attended the one last year, and it was excellent. It's really worth going. They do some amazing drills, and seeing these young people display what they learned is quite inspiring. Any comments on that? 6.2, again, correspondence. We have a request from the Tour de Fort for a donation. They're requesting a donation of $1,000. We have made this donation in the past. I think that this is a worthy cause, and with council's permission, I would put an oral resolution on the floor that we ask or we direct administration to bring a report to the next council meeting on making this donation. I'm getting nods, so the resolution then would be that council directs administration to bring a report on the Tour de Fort donation request, recommending whether we donate or not. Could I get a mover and seconder on that? Councillor Bernetta, Councillor Mackey. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? That's carried. No one is opposed. Thank you for that. And then another interesting correspondence. Paramedic Week is May 19th through the 25th. And again, I just want to speak briefly to this. We have outstanding paramedics in the Rainy River District. Unfortunately, we don't have enough. Right across the province of Ontario, it's getting more and more difficult to staff the required number of paramedics, and we're short here in the Rainy River District anywhere from 4 to 6 paramedics. So consequently, the paramedics that we do have are having to pick up the extra work. And I think that it would really be worthwhile if councillors and members of the public attended this barbecue. So they're inviting they're inviting members of the public and councilors across the district to 3 different barbecues. The barbecue in Fort Francis is on May 23rd from 5 to 7 p.m. At the ambulance base. So it might be really worthwhile to go down there and tell those paramedics what a great job they're doing for us and how we appreciate their work. Comments? Seeing none, moving on. Item 7. Council reports. I have my usual lengthy report, but we have a lengthy agenda tonight, so I'm going to cut most of it out, but I just want to speak to some of them where there are groups and folks in our community that should be thanked. There's some really good things going on in our community. On April 19th, we had the Volunteer Appreciation Barbecue, and there I really want to give a shout out to our community volunteers who really make Fort Francis the great place that it is to live. And I also want to give a shout out and thanks to our clerks department and the staff at the Sportsplex and Public Works who helped put this on. We attended NOMA from April 24th to 26th. I'm not going to read it, that rather lengthy report. It's in my written report, which is in the council agenda. But on April 26th, I attended the museum exhibit grand opening, and this was the opening of the latest exhibit, which was an exhibit on textile arts called Community Ties and Tapestry. And the exhibit's still on. And if you have not seen that exhibit, I encourage you to go. It's excellent. It's truly outstanding. I thought to myself, I like to go and support community events, but I really wasn't sure what would be in a textile exhibit. It was breathtaking. There were amazing quilts from professional quilters as well as just amateur quilters from our community. There were crocheted wedding dresses. There was a young lady who made her prom dress, and the dress was outstanding. There were all sorts of things that were made, crocheted rugs, hooked rugs. So if you have a chance, go and see that exhibit. And again, I want to thank the museum curator, the museum staff, and the volunteers that put that on. April 27th, there was a trade show, and again, it was outstanding. The weather wasn't that good, which I think contributed to people coming indoor because there was a great number of people coming in, lots of attendance. So again, my thanks to the Chamber of Commerce for putting on a first-rate trade show, many booths, a very fair-like atmosphere. Outside there were bouncy castles and emergency vehicles. That was great. One of the outstanding things I've seen in the last couple of weeks was the high school musical. They did We Will Rock You. It was the 40th anniversary of high school musicals. For 40 years, Fort Francis High School has been bringing outstanding musical entertainment to our community. And I should mention that the first musical 40 years ago was put on by John Dutton, Murray Kitts, and Gene Boileau. And they managed to get John Dutton to come out of retirement and be musical director for this one. But again, the students of Fort Francis High School, the cast and the crew, the volunteers, what an outstanding job they did. May 2nd, here at the Civic Center, we did a flag raising for community living, Fort Francis and district, because May is Community Living Month. And again, I want to give a shout out to the folks at Community Living for the job that they do for their clients on behalf of our community. Again, something really noteworthy. On May 3rd and May 7th, there were a pair of awareness walks for murdered and missing Indigenous women and girls. The one on May 3rd was sponsored by Yiskandego Ikwi. Again, it was a very moving event, well attended, lots of red dresses. The awareness walk on May 7th was sponsored by the Fort Francis Senior Center, the United Native Friendship Center, and again, it was raining, but there was a good turnout, and it's really good to see folks from our community coming out and helping to raise awareness of these serious problems. May 8th, CAO Rob and I did a lighthearted thing. We attended a pair of grade 10 civics classes at Fort Francis High School and talked to them about municipal government. That was a fun thing to do. And then on May 8th, again, I want to compliment the local McDonald's. They did a fundraiser for Ronald McDonald House. Something I didn't know that I want the community to know is that Fort Francis and our surrounding community use the Ronald McDonald House in Winnipeg a great deal, much more so than other communities on average. The stats that they gave me was that our community on average has 10 families a year use the Ronald McDonald House in Winnipeg, as opposed to other communities which average 3. So that Ronald McDonald House serves a great purpose for Fort Francis and district, and I want to thank the local McDonald's who put a portion of their sales on May 8th aside to support that. The last thing that I want to speak to, but it's an important one, is every year the Royal Canadian Legion sponsors a Legion Veterans Supper. And I felt privileged to be asked to attend and to speak and bring greetings on behalf of Council and the town of Fort Francis. As usual, it was service was provided by our air cadets, and the Ladies Auxiliary provided the food, which was outstanding. If you've ever been to the Legion for a meal, you know you don't go away hungry, and the food's exquisite. And I'll stop there and move on to Councillor Mackey for his report.
Thank you, Your Worship. In mid-April, the Advisory Committee for the Senior Center received a presentation from John Callan and Les Baker regarding the pool room at the facility. Now that topic is on the agenda for later, so I won't speak any further on that at this point. Plans for the upcoming June Seniors Month activities are ongoing. There are various events that are being organized for throughout the entire month, so should anyone have an opportunity, please partake in any or all of these activities. On June 25th, the volunteer supper for all the volunteers that help to make the Senior Center run so smoothly, cost efficiently, is being held in appreciation of all of those volunteers and the work that they do. So a shout out to them. And for anyone who has not visited the Senior Center, please take the time to check out this jewel that we have here in Fort Francis. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Mackey. That brings us to item number 8 on the agenda, which is the consent agenda. We have 9 items. Starting at 8.2, recommendation reads that the following council meeting minutes be approved as presented. Regular council meeting minutes April 22nd, 2024, special council meeting May 8th, 2024, and special council meeting April 18th, 2024. 8.3, under boards and committee meeting minutes, the recommendation reads that the boards and committee meeting minutes be received as information, and they are the Sister Betty Kennedy Advisory Committee, February 21st meeting minutes, the Museum and Culture Advisory Committee, February 20 minutes, the Police Services Board, March 27 meeting minutes, and the BIA, April 10th meeting minutes. 8.4 deals with the Asset Retirement Obligations Memo. The recommendation reads that Council approve report AR-24-0577, receiving the Asset Retirement Obligations Memo, which details the direction of asset retirement obligations for the town of Fort Francis. 8.5 is the Fort Francis Wastewater Treatment Facility March 2024 monthly report, and the recommendation reads that Council receive report AR-24-0582 as information. 8.6 deals with the Sunny Cove Conditional Contribution Agreement. Recommendation reads that Council approve report AR-24-0576 and agree with The recommendation of administration to enter into a conditional contribution agreement for the Sunny Cove rehabilitation with the NOHFC, and that an authorizing bylaw be prepared to authorize the mayor and clerk to execute the agreement on behalf of the corporation. 8.7 are financial statements for the period ending March 31st, and the recommendation reads that council received the attached financial statements as report AR-24-0589 for the general water and sewer funds for the period ending April 30th, 2024. 8.8 is the drinking water systems monthly summary report for March and April of this year. Recommendation reads that approval of report AR-24-0542 agree with the recommendation of administration that the March 2024 and the April 2024 water system monthly summary reports be accepted by council prior to being made available to the general public. 8.9 is the annual review of the Town of Fort Frances Emergency Management Program. And the recommendation reads that council approve report AR-24-0575 and agree with the recommendation of the EM Program Committee to update the Emergency Management Program as presented, and that council authorize that a bylaw be prepared for signing by the mayor and clerk. And finally, we have the intersection traffic control signals asset summary, and the recommendation here reads that council receive report AR-24-0587 as information. Councillors, would you like to pull any of those items? Councillor Brunetta?
8.10.
Okay. Councillor Mackey?
8.6.
Anyone else? Seeing none, we'll go to 8.6. Councillor Mackey.
Thank you, Your Worship. My concern is, it goes back right to August when we did the initial motion to initiate this process. So correct me if I'm wrong, we are talking about agreeing to move ahead with this renovation of Russell Hall. And well, I guess that's my first, is that what we're trying to do here with this?
I'll go to the CAO on that.
Thank you, through the chair. No, that's not what we're looking to do. That has been done through awarding of RFPs, approval of capital budgets. This is just to sign the contribution agreement between the town of Fort Frances and Northern Ontario Heritage Fund to receive funding to offset our costs associated with that renovation.
Follow up?
So then my question is, what the renovation, when did we actually have a council discussion on the path to be taken in regards to the entire Sunny Cove facility?
You want to take that, CAO, Rob?
Certainly. If you will recall, and I'm trying to think back on dates, I want to say it was August or maybe July of last summer. I brought a couple of reports forward looking for some direction on the future of Sunny Cove, and at that point in time, council gave direction to proceed with renovations to Sunny Cove to make it operational again.
Thank you. Final question?
If I recall that August meeting, I believe I asked, give me a second here. Are we agreeing to this motion back in August simply to formalize the process to make the application for the funding, not to the point where it commits us to a Russell Hall renovation? If you remember, my comment was we would be putting lipstick on a pig. That was the meeting. So at that point, I was assured that that motion was simply to authorize us doing a grant application so that the time frame needed would allow us to get that money and decide in the meantime exactly what we were going to do with it. Well, I don't believe we've had a full-blown conversation as to the plan for that facility.
Thank you, Councillor Mackey. Any further discussion on this? Seeing none, I'll go to Councillor Bernetta.
Thank you. So I understand that item 8.10 is for information purposes. I just wanted to express that I think there's some really great options in there, and I'm really happy that we're looking at a possible roundabout at Central Avenue. I think it's a great idea, and we have all that property available to do that. So that was my only comment. Thank you.
Thank you for that. That was a good comment. Anyone else? Councillor McTaggart.
Thank you, Worship. One of the recommendations is for the removal of the lights at Armit and Second. I'm just, with the school in the area, and I know there's another discussion later on this evening in regards to removal of four-way stop sign. I'm concerned about the safety of the children crossing there. And has that been considered?
Who would like to comment on this? CO Rob.
Thank you, through the chair. The only recommendation being brought forward tonight is just to receive the report as information.
Thank you, Councillor McTaggart. Thank you, CO Rob. Anything else? Seeing none, then, there's a recommendation that reads, the council approve the consent agenda as follows. Agenda items 8.2, 8.3, 8.4, 8.5, 8.7, 8.8, and 8.9. Mover and seconder, please. Councillor McTaggart, Councillor Bernetta. Any discussion? Seeing none, calling the question. All in favor? That's carried. No one is opposed. And then the two resolutions that were pulled, just reading them one more time. 8.6, that council approve report AR-24-0576 and agree with the recommendation of administration to enter into a conditional contribution agreement for the Sunny Cove rehabilitation with the Northern Ontario Heritage Fund, and that an authorizing bylaw be prepared to authorize the mayor and clerk to execute the agreement on behalf of the corporation. Could I get a mover and seconder, please? Councillor B and Councillor Bernetta. Any discussion? Councillor Mackey?
Then my question is, what is the proposed cost of this renovation? And has the consultants that were putting this together come to a final number, or are we going to be surprised with a substantial overrun?
Who's going to tackle this one? CAO Rob.
Thank you. I just want to reiterate that what we're looking at tonight is deciding on a funding agreement. The capital budget had the costs estimates, including funding, outlined within it.
Thank you, CAO Rob. Do you have a follow-up, Councillor Mackey, or are you good? Okay. Calling the question, all in favor? Opposed? It's carried. Item 8.10, recommendation reads that council receive report AR-24-0587 as information. Mover and seconder, please. Councillor Bien. Seconder, Councillor Mackey. Thank you. Hi, Mandy, and welcome. Any discussion on this one? Councillor Bien.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, just to follow up on Councillor McTaggart's comment earlier. This is just information. You've outlined the problems we're having with the traffic signals, and so many of them are now obsolete, and the problems we're going to face going forward. You've listed several options that are wonderful. I just want to make sure that tonight we're just agreeing with the information provided. We're not if we did any particular option, it would be come up to a council meeting in future before we did any particular option, like removing this traffic signal at Scott and Armid, removing the traffic signals at Scott and Central Avenue. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bien. And calling the question, all in favor? Oh, sorry.
I think I had it.
Oh,
Sorry.
I've got two conversations going here at once.
I was just asking that before we vote on any, there's just information tonight outlining the problem and the options we have, but before we do any of the options, we have to come to a future meeting.
Yes.
For a decision.
Yes. Sorry about that, too. Now calling the question, all in favor? That's carried and no one is opposed. Okay, item 9.1. This is David G. Bogosian, Integrity Commissioner report on a complaint regarding Councillor David Kirchner. Do we have Mr. Bogosian online?
Good afternoon, Mayor and members of Council. As I'm sure you all recall, my name is David Bogosian. I'm your Integrity Commissioner. I've completed a report. Initiated it to the clerk on May 3rd, 24, in respect of a complaint that I was directed to investigate that was referred to me by Council pursuant to a resolution passed on February 13, 2024. The gist of the complaint is against Councillor David Kirchner, and the gist of the complaint is set out in paragraph 2 of my report, which is essentially a memo of notes that I understand the mayor read out at a closed session of council on February 13, 2024. In furtherance of the investigation, I reviewed literally dozens of strings of email. I interviewed a number of people, including Councillor McTaggart, Mayor Halakis, the acting CAO, and the clerk. And I ended up making a number of findings of misconduct based on those reviews, which are very well detailed in my report of May 3rd, 2024, which runs 29 pages and 97 paragraphs. But I essentially found findings of misconduct, violations of the code with respect to the following headings: inappropriate conduct of council business via email, despite numerous warnings to cease doing that from various players such as the mayor, the CAO, and the clerk. Inappropriate requests of staff for information outside of a council meeting, inappropriate attempts to direct staff to do things without the sanction of council, interference with or attempt to interfere with the deliberations of the Committee of Adjustments, or an attempt to get a decision already made of the Committee of Adjustments overturned, which may not seem like a big deal, but it actually is quite a big deal in that this Committee of Adjustments is supposed to be an independent quasi-judicial body. And what you will see from my report is the complaint that I regarded by far the most serious, which was Councillor Kirchner's dealings with fellow councillors, in part his dealings with Councillor McTaggart, which, the mayor, which I felt at times was rude and inappropriate, but especially with respect to his dealings back in December of 2022 and moving into early 2023, with respect to his dealings with Councillor McTaggart, and allegations which I essentially find were baseless, that that were made by Councillor Kircher that Councillor McTaggart knowingly misled council about a couple of aspects of the forestry license. And he did so in a manner that I found was intended to attempt to intimidate and harass Councillor McTaggart. And as a result of my findings, I also found that he did improperly attempt to direct staff on numerous occasions and attempted to obtain information other than proper channels of members of staff. And I also had a concern, although I did not make a finding of misconduct with respect to it, but that had to do with the handling of confidential information and the fact that we had seen from emails that were sent to me, but also from Councillor Kircher's own admission, that he would forward at times where he claimed that he felt information was being manipulated or tampered with, to use his own words. He would forward confidential documents that were provided to him for closed meeting purposes to his business, personal business email account from his councillor account, email account. And although I don't find that information was shared beyond that, it's a practice that creates the appearance of potential breach of confidentiality. It certainly creates a much greater opportunity for a breach of confidentiality that if those emails were left in the councillor email server, email address. I have recommended penalties in paragraphs 89 through 93 of my report. And I broke it down by the nature of the violation of the open meeting principle, which means you cannot conduct council business outside of a properly constituted open meeting of council. I recommended that Councillor Kircher's pay be suspended for 10 days. For the harassment of staff, I found that, and for harassment of staff and also inappropriate attempts to elicit information of staff through improper channels, I recommended 10 days suspension of pay. Attempting to influence or alter a committee of adjustment decision, I found that there should be a 5-day suspension of pay for that. I suggested that there be a reprimand in respective improper use or dealing with confidential information, even though I stress that I am aware of no breach of confidentiality on the part of Councillor Kircher. It's simply the appearance of inappropriate dealings with confidential information, which I think warrants a reprimand. And with respect to penalties, I recommended a 30-day suspension for what I regarded as by far the most serious violation, which was the attacks of Councillor Kircher on Councillor McTaggart's reputation and his person, making unfounded allegations. I made a finding that Councillor Kircher never bothered to talk to Councillor McTaggart about what was in his mind when he reported things that he did. I've found that there were quite innocent, and I accepted the explanations Councillor McTaggart gave. I further accept that Councillor Kircher, according to Councillor McTaggart, never once asked him to clarify where he got this information, what was the basis of his belief about the things that Councillor Kircher was accusing him of willfully misleading council about. And the thing about this allegation that really put it over the top for me was the fact that there was a clearly implied threat of criminal prosecution of Councillor McTaggart made by Councillor Kircher by referring or copying an email to council to a OPP officer that implied that the former mayor, Mayor Call, was under investigation for breach of trust, but it was made to sound like she was being investigated for misleading counsel instead of what she was really being investigated for, which was producing a confidential legal report or legal opinion that was not intended for public disclosure to Councillor Kircher before he was a member of council. But that was all twisted to suggest that the actual investigation of former Mayor Call was about misleading counsel, and suggested the McTaggart should also be investigated for the same reasons, since he allegedly committed the same misleading conduct. I guess the most striking thing about the responses I got from Councillor Kircher, because I got extensive detailed responses for which I thank him. And then I asked some follow-up questions, and I got further additional responses with no less than 6 large attachments. Was that not once did Councillor Kircher express any remorse or contrition for his conduct. Notwithstanding that he received countless warnings about the very sort of dealings, for example, with dealing with council business by email, received warnings, even acknowledged them, but in dealing with me, it was pure defiance and not an ounce of remorse or contrition expressed in anything I received from him. So I am standing by 55-day cumulative penalty for the various breaches of the code of conduct. Is that a high penalty? It's relatively speaking high. It's the highest I've personally given out. The highest before was 40 days. But I think it's fully justified. And in fact, if anything, I would have gone higher. And I think 55 days is a fair reflection of the extent of the misconduct that I found. In addition to that, as I said before, there should be, in my submission, a reprimand for the confidential information misuse. I'm not saying disclosure, simply mishandling. It should not be, confidential documents should not be sent to your personal or business email addresses. It's just a recipe for disclosure, inadvertent or otherwise. So those are my recommendations. In addition, I am recommending, pursuant to section 14.1 CV of the code, that Councillor Kircher be requested to publicly apologize to Councillor McTaggart for the reasons I've set out in my report. And I've also suggested that the town might consider hiring a workplace facilitator to work with Councillors Kircher and McTaggart to restore relations between them and enhance the working of council as a whole. So those are my a summary of my report. I'd be happy to take any questions.
Thank you, David. Councillors, any questions? There are no questions, David. With that, then, I'll go to the recommendation and put it on the floor. Recommendation reads, the council received the report from Integrity Commissioner David G. Bogosian, dated May 3rd, 2024, relative to the conduct of Councillor David Kircher, and that the following sanctions be imposed. 1. Councillor Kircher's remuneration as a councillor be suspended for a period of 55 days commencing on the date this motion is passed. 2. Councillor Kircher be formally reprimanded for his inappropriate dealings with confidential information. 3. Councillor Kircher be requested to publicly apologize to Councillor McTaggart for his conduct toward Councillor McTaggart as set out herein, as provided for in section 14.1(5) of the Code of Conduct. And 4, that the town hire a workplace facilitator to work with Councillors Kircher and McTaggart and council as a whole in the discretion of the facilitator, with the goal of restoring mutual trust and respect amongst council members. A copy of the Integrity Commission's report shall be provided to the facilitator. Can I get a mover and seconder, please? Councillor Bien, Councillor Bernetta. Any discussion? Councillor Bernetta.
I'd like to propose an amendment to the motion. Just proposing that the last paragraph, the part about a workplace facilitator, be held in abeyance until further discussion. I preferred the wording that Mr. Bogosian had in his statement, saying that, facilitator perhaps to work with Councillor McTaggart and Councillor Kircher together to improve council relations as a whole. I just believe that the remainder of council really works well together, and I don't see a need to expand this training or facilitation to the remainder of council.
So I'm just interpreting what you said. Would your amendment, does this sound all right? Held, that item number 4 be held in abeyance until such time as council feels appropriate. Okay, I realize that Councillor Kircher, you had your hand up to speak.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I believe we are recording the meeting this evening. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Can I have a copy of the Integrity Commissioner's report?
Yes.
Thank you. So first, if you want me to, let me say that I am very disappointed with the Integrity Commissioner's report, and I strongly disagree with his findings and his recommendations. I am troubled that much of what I would like to say or be able to say publicly in my defense is confidential, which ties my hands unfairly. I will take the necessary time to consider next steps, if any, including any potential legal steps. Everything that I have done and for which I've been criticized is motivated by my concerns for the town and my desire to ensure that council is always acting in the best interests of the town and its citizens. I will tender my resignation tomorrow, and with that, I will say good night.
Thank you, Councillor Kircher. Okay. Order, please. Order, please. Order, please. There's a resolution on the floor. I need a mover and seconder on the resolution. On the amendment, sorry. Yep, Councillor Bien, Councillor Bernetta. So moved by Councillor Bien, seconded by Councillor Bernetta, that the first 3 items in the recommendation. Order, please. You're out of order. Again, I ask for order. If you'd like to speak, please go out of the council chambers. One more time, I ask for order, please. If you'd like to speak, please leave the council chambers. So it's been moved and seconded that the first 3 steps in the resolution hold, and that step number 4 shall be held in abeyance until such time as council finds appropriate. That's been moved and seconded. Any discussion on that amendment? Seeing none, voting on the amendment, all in favor? That's carried. We now move to the main motion. The main motion then incorporates the first three statements from the Integrity Commissioner, with item number 4 having added to it that it shall be held in abeyance until such time as council feels appropriate. I need a mover and seconder for that. Mover and seconder? So we're on the main motion. We've amended the main motion.
We already had a mover and a seconder for the main motion.
But it's okay. Are B and Bernetta are accepting the amended motion then? You're amenable to moving and seconding that? Okay, then, thank you for that. Any discussion now on the amended main motion? Seeing none? All in favor? That's carried. No one is opposed. Okay, that brings us to item number 9.2. Recommendation reads that council receive report AR-24-0579 for the review of the proposed new records retention bylaw, and further that council approve the new proposed records retention bylaw to formalize the town's records retention process and repeal bylaw 47-16. A bylaw be brought forward for its enactment, the necessary delegated authority to be incorporated into the bylaw, granting authority to the clerk for streamlined management and updates, and further that this authority be reflected in the authority of bylaw upon its next review, and finally a municipal records management policy be drafted and brought forward for council's consideration. Can I get a mover and seconder, please? Councillor Mackey, Councillor Bernetta, oh, Councillor Olson. Sorry, I keep forgetting I got some device in front of me and I can only see around the corner of it. Councillor Mackey, moved, seconded by Councillor Olson. Any discussion? Seeing none, calling the question, all in favor? That's carried, no one is opposed. (9.3) Recommendation reads, the council agreed to the recommendation of administration in report AR-24-0585 to place $250,000 into the working capital reserves, and that the remaining $324,000 go into the corporate vehicle reserve fund. Could I get a mover and seconder on that, please? Councillor Bernetta, Councillor Olson. Any discussion on this one? Seeing none, calling the question, all in favor? That's carried, no one is opposed. Brings us to item 10, which is Community Services Division reports. 10.1 deals with the 8th Street trails. Recommendation reads that council directs administration to initiate the drafting and negotiation of a memorandum of understanding between the town of Fort Francis and the 8th Street Trails Volunteer Group for a term of 18 months as outlined in report AR-24-0581. Can I get a mover and seconder on this, please? Councillor Behan, looking for a seconder. Councillor Olson. Any discussion? I'm seeing none. I'll call the question. All in favor? It's carried. No one is opposed. (10.2) That council approval of report AR-24-0578 will agree with the recommendation of the administration to adopt the final Town of Fort Francis Recreation Master Plan 2024 to 2034, and that administration be directed to publish the document on the town website and make it available to the public. Can I get a mover and seconder, please? Getting a little slow, folks, here. Councillor Mackey. Councillor Behan. Discussion on this one. Councillor Bernetta.
Thank you, Your Worship. I wasn't surprised, but I was concerned to see the discussion around Sunny Cove Camp. I hope that there is some public consultation about whether we dispose of it or re-energize it. I'm really hoping also to see some ideas put forward about how we could possibly make it a revenue generating site, as opposed to just saying, well, you know, we've lost money in the past, so we have to get rid of it. I'd like to see a little bit of effort put into looking at options for that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bernetta. Further comments? Councillor Bean.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just bear with me while I find it. I think it was on page 22, it made first reference of it, and it was also expanded upon on page 26 of the report. I just want to just bear with me while I scroll down here. Come on. This takes time, unfortunately. Okay, here we go. Under, it was mentioned first on page 22 and also on page 26 under community engagement and inclusivity. It said, a strong desire for a unified community recreation group emerged as a central theme. I'm not sure what that means. Are they looking at, there should be another board or committee, an advisory committee that be established to help with this? I know we had a recreation board back in the 80s when I first moved to town. A previous council, way before my time, decided to abolish it. Is this something that we can look at again as maybe the way to get to, because some of the recommendations are, of course, for public input and consultation. There's a couple of recommendations also about youth and children and youth initiatives and programming. Maybe there's a way to get some youth on that committee as well. So I'm just wondering if that's it's not an actual recommendation of the master plan, but I'm wondering if that's something we could consider as a council moving forward as a way to get that public input, because that's what it seems to be reading there. I'm not quite sure what that means, but thank you.
Thank you. Manager Nathan.
Yes, thank you, and through the chair to Councillor Behan. So it didn't show up in the recommendations because that was something that we heard through the consultation process and the recommendation, taking that through to put forward our communication strategy and public engagement throughout the implementation of the plan. That may look different for different aspects of the plan. So as Councillor Bernetta was just suggesting, a larger public consultation for Sunny Cove might be really important, where us deciding to remove a shinny skate from our schedule due to low participation might not need the same level of public consultation. So by dispersing that throughout the plan, it allows us to approach each situation as needed as we implement the plan. But if council wishes, we can do a committee of recreation, but I don't know if that's the best way forward.
Thank you for that. Follow up?
Just again, I'm reading it, said a strong desire for unified community recreation group. I didn't know what they meant by group. If they were talking about maybe some kind of order committee being established or reestablished, because there was one 20 to 30 years ago, and for some reason it was disbanded by the previous council, and maybe there's an opportunity now to go down that path again, but that's up to all of council to decide. Thank you.
Thank you, Manager Nathan. Thank you, Councillor Brian. Any further discussion on this? Seeing none, I'll call the question then. All in favor? That's carried. No one is opposed. Okay, that brings us to 10.3, which is an unbudgeted expense. The recommendation reads that Council receive report AR-24-0580 and endorse the administration's recommendation to defer the capital expense of $8,713.02 for pool tables at the Senior Center to be included in the 2025 capital budget plan. Can I get a mover and seconder on this, please? Councillor Behan. Councillor Olson. Discussion? Councillor Bernetta.
I'd just like to thank those pool players who brought together those funds to contribute towards this. I think it's wonderful. I really like to see people come forward and say, here's something that I'm passionate about and something I care about, and I'm willing to put my time or money toward making it happen. So just shout out to those people. Thank you.
Here. Further discussion? Councillor Mackey?
Firstly, I'd like to agree with what Councillor Bernetta said. So the pool players have donated or will be $4,900, and so we're in a deficit of $3,800 roughly. So to defer this till next year, those pool tables aren't going to be sitting there. They're reserved, but there's no money tied up to reserve those pool tables. They're not. That company's not going to hang on to them forever, and things only go up in price. So to wait a year is just going to mean more money. $3,800 for a facility that costs $40,000 a year to operate because it's all volunteers. When we have every other facility and every other aspect that out there for the community costs substantially more, without pointing fingers at any of those numbers for the other facilities. The 3,800, I think we should just be saying, yes, let's just do that. If these pool players and the senior center has already come up with 4,900, let's do this and make it happen so that the senior center and one of the aspects that is done there can thrive, and that whole facility can continue to thrive and grow. Thank you.
Further discussion? Oh, Councillor McTaggart.
Thank you, Your Worship. And thank you, Councillor Bernetta, for your comments. I think it's bang on. I really would like to see us try to find the money to complete this purchase. I think that group stepping forward with $4,900 is terrific. And I don't believe it's in the report, but the advisory committee supports this also. At the last meeting, there was extensive talk on this, and they quite supported it. And I understand, I don't use the pool room, but I understand that with the purchase of these new tables that it may well increase the use of the room too. We presently have one table that's sitting there unusable, and the table that is presently in use is in demand, but it's apparently a snooker table, which involves a greater degree of skill, where these tables that are going to be purchased are much easier to use and would be more welcoming to even novice players. So I would like us to try and find the money to match the donation. Thank you.
Councillor Bien?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, I mean, when I hear unbudgeted, that sort of raised the red flag, and I tried to avoid those at all costs. I understand the arguments that have been put forth by my fellow councillors. I guess my question may be through you, Mr. Mayor, to Recreation Manager Young. To follow up on Councillor McTaggart's point, I understand that there's one large snooker table. The second snooker table, I think, is not usable because the rails didn't match. So would these two smaller tables replace the large snooker table, or are you going to keep the large snooker table, and then the two others are, and my follow-up then would be, if we wait a year, would this be just the one table at the center for a year? Thank you.
Go ahead.
Thank you through the chair to Councillor Behan. So the room would be left with one large snooker table and two smaller pool tables. If we defer this to 2025, the capital budget would reflect the purchase of two smaller pool tables. So it would be the same amount of tables if we purchase them now or if we defer this.
Follow up?
Just to clarify then, Mr. Young, if we defer the purchase to 2025, there'd only be one pool table then for the duration of 2024 until the...
That is correct.
Okay.
I'll just weigh in on this one. I don't disagree with anything that was said. I think the senior center is one of the prime assets that we have in our community, and we do have an aging demographic, and we need to provide services for that demographic. But I do want to point out that recently we spent several hundreds of thousands of dollars putting an addition on the senior center, and then had to pay some overages on that as well. And then recently, we had the senior centers come with a request for some other funding, which we granted, and rightly so. I'm in favor of it. But I'm with Councillor Bean. When I see unbudgeted, that concerns me. And what concerns me then is that a possible precedent is being set because we have other advisory committees. And then are we going to get in a pattern where advisory committees come forward with unbudgeted amounts and we grant them? I'm not disagreeing that this is a really important thing, but it's the unbudgeted aspect that bothers me. So I would be in favor of doing this the proper way, which is to grant the money in the 2025 budget. Any further discussion before I call the question? Yes?
Thank you, Your Worship, through you. So I just wanted to point out, Councillor McTaggart made a comment with respect to the recommendation coming from the advisory committee. Council's committee bylaw does specify that the advisory committees will not have the ability to provide financial recommendations to council when it comes to these types of requests, including, I know you just talked about, you know, really looking at the broader picture of things in terms of the other advisory committees that we have. I think from my perspective here, what I'm really seeing is we need a process on how we're going to be receiving donations. There's no real process that are in place. Can these advisory start collecting monies and receiving donations? That's not clear in any of our information. So the committee bylaw certainly does not provide that within their mandates. The other piece that I would caution on is before accepting donations, we really need to look at the work that's going to be involved. If there's installation, restoration cost, ongoing maintenance, it's wonderful, and we love receiving the donation monies. But you know, like a splash pad type of project, there's ongoing significant cost. And I know that we're seeing a lot of that today. So it's important for council to really evaluate. Donations are wonderful, but really evaluate the how that's going to be brought forward and the impact that it's going to have moving forward. And the other bit that just to highlight, you wanna be sure to have a process in place for donations to make sure that it's fair and impartial. And what I mean by that is you want to make sure that donations that are being received by the municipality is being handled appropriately. So there's not the perception that we're receiving donations for in turn granting a permit or granting a variance or granting those kinds of things, granting maybe they're in tax arrears, I don't know, right? So you need to have a process in place to accept donations. Believe it or not, there's such a thing because there could be biases. So something for council to consider, putting it out there. We love donations. We would never discourage them, but a good firm process is important.
So what I'm hearing the clerk say is that at some point you would like council to direct administration to bring forth a report on donations. Would you like that this evening? All right, we'll think about that. Any further discussion? Councillor Bien.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, I'm a little bit troubled with the fact that there'd only be the one pool table at the Sister Kennedy Center for the next remaining of the months of this year. But I have to agree, I think, with Madam Clerk there and making sure we follow the proper procedure and policy in doing this. So in that respect, I will support the recommendation.
Councillor Bernetta and then Councillor Sierra.
This is, I find it frustrating and concerning that people come forward wanting to help and we have to turn them away. I understand your concerns and your cautions. I would prefer that rather than voting on this issue tonight, we defer the issue until we put something in place. I find it a bit strange that we accepted donations for the spray park, but we can't accept donations for a pool table. So for me, there's some ambiguity there. So I would prefer not voting on the motion tonight and maybe waiting until we receive this report on that you suggested on receiving donations, and then proceed after that. We don't have any guarantee that these people who've come forward now will still be there in 2025. So we still don't know how much to budget for, because we don't know if that money is going to be there or not. So I'd just like to maybe put some more thought into it before we go ahead with a motion. Thank you.
So we'll hear from CAO Rob, and then we'll consider your suggestion to defer. CAO Rob?
Thank you, through the chair. I just wanted to touch on a couple of points that you made, Mr. Mayor, and Councillor Bean as well. Council mere weeks ago passed their 2024 operating and capital budgets. Arguably the most important job of council every year is to pass a budget. And here we are considering an unbudgeted capital expenditure, whether it's $3,800 or $38,000. The principle of it is the same. We set out every year and we look at what we're going to spend through operating through capital. We look at what we have in reserves. We look at what we're going to receive in taxation, and we look at it holistically. And now we're considering, breaking that apart already a month after we've passed that budget. I don't think it's financially responsible to be looking at an unbudgeted already at all. However, sometimes some things happen, and we need to be flexible enough to handle those emergency situations, or those situations that arise that directly affect operations. I don't think this fits into either one of those categories. So I think, like I said, Mr. Mayor and Councillor Bean, I think are right on when they get nervous thinking about unbudgeteds. That's duly responsible, I think, in your roles as council.
Go ahead, Madam Clerk.
Just thank you, Your Worship. Just to add to our interim CAO, Rob, and I hear what Councillor Burnett is saying in terms of the concerns that I bring forward. And so when I combine the two, interim CAO Rob and Councillor Burnett's comments, it comes down to one thing. Administration often will sit before you and provide you recommendations that are probably not going to be popular, and you're not probably going to like to hear them. But it is our job to do that and provide you all that information, and then it's your job to determine what you want to do with that information. If you accept it, we can respect that. If you want to move forward with it, we can respect that as well. So I just wanted to point out that the ultimate decision always comes down to council. It's just we are there as the subject matter expert, and we're providing you what we know in terms of risks and associations that comes with providing this kind of information. And just one last note on your comment with respect to the Spray Park Committee and receiving those donations. You will recall that the committee bylaw and the terms of reference that were created specifically for that committee were to receive donations and sponsorship specifically. So thank you, Your Worship.
And I ask you to bear with me while I confer with the clerk on a procedural matter. Councillor Burnett, I was just conferring about your request to defer. I can poll council and see if they wish to defer, but if we do, to make it a valuable deference, we would have to put a date until when, but there would be no point in deferring unless we got the policy that the clerk was talking about put into place, and that could take a while. So do you still want to defer? Okay, we'll call the question on the, if anybody, does anyone have any further discussion before I do call the question? Okay, calling the question then, all in favor? No, on the recommendation that's before you. Yeah.
Defer.
No. I thought you told me you didn't want to defer. You want to defer?
Sorry, the motion says to defer the.
Oh, yeah, so the motion that's before us, not your request to defer the discussion on this. So just to clarify that, the recommendation that's on the floor and moved and seconded says, the council received report AR-24-0580 and endorse the administration's recommendation to defer the capital expense of $8,713.02 for pool tables at the senior center to be included in the 2025 capital budget plan. And last chance for discussion. Calling the question on that, all in favor? Opposed? Motion is defeated. What do you want to do now, council?
Question on procedure. Is a tie vote a defeat or?
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
So we've defeated what's before you. We need suggestions for moving forward. Councilor Mackey?
Well, I'll make the suggestion that we pay the difference, and you can word this how it probably should be, but we're paying the difference of the $8,700 minus the fundraised money by the pool player group.
Okay, so you're suggesting that we pay the remainder of the $8,713 once the donations have been deducted from it. Okay. I need a mover and seconder for that. Councilor Mackey, Councilor McTaggart. So it's been moved and seconded, and then that council will pay the remainder of the $8,713.02 once the proposed donations have been deducted from it. Any discussion on this one? Okay, I'm going to call this question. All in favor? Yeah. That's 3. Opposed? It's defeated. What do you want to do now, council? Go ahead. Are you still thinking? Okay. I think the problem is that we're deadlocked between two philosophical points here. And usually on a case like this, it's unlikely to become undeadlocked unless you go a radically different direction. A radically different direction could be to defer and get the policy, but that will take some time. Councilor McTaggart, or are you still thinking?
Should we? Are we gonna? Go ahead. Yeah. We'll do it.
Yes.
Councillor McTaggart and I are volunteering to step up and fundraise the remaining amount on behalf of the senior center pool players.
That's excellent. Good for you. I think we'll all help. I mean, it's a good cause. So. Yes.
Regarding if all the money is raised and given to the town and the town purchases it, does that defeat the, like, get around the tax burden to purchase that? I'm not sure if that 8,700 includes taxes and everything. I'm getting a yes from.
It might be a question for the treasurer, but it kind of puts her on the spot.
The 8713 quote is inclusive of HST on the quote that we've received.
Okay. Yep.
So then the question is, do they still need to raise the 87 if the town's buying that? Or can they do, I'm just asking about the space. How, is there a way to get around that?
Madam Treasurer?
So, I believe, but I don't see it here. I believe that this is purchased in Manitoba, so there's more complexity than just HST here. So I don't have an answer right this second with respect to the value, but yes, essentially whatever it's going to cost the town net of HST is what we can collect. You still have to approve it though as an unbudgeted capital expense, regardless if it's fully donated. You know what I mean?
I actually don't. Theo, Rob?
Thank you, through the chair. If you recall the capital budget, we have everything listed on the capital budget we are going to spend in capital dollars. Whether we are spending it, if it's coming from grants or it's coming from donations by others, it's still listed on the capital budget. So for example, the Splash Park was 100% funded through other agencies and or donations. You will look and see it on our capital sheet. So this would still, even if it's 100% funded, would still have to be an unbudgeted capital expenditure.
Got it. Yes.
Just as a reminder, council has just defeated that motion.
Yes. Thank you, madam. So, so procedurally, we're going to have to reconsider the motion, which means somebody who moved it will have to propose that we reconsider, and we'll need 2/3 to reconsider. But once we've done that, then we can move forward again. So looking for a motion to reconsider. Councilor Bernetta? Or are you asking a question? No. Okay, we have a motion to reconsider. I need a seconder to reconsider. Councilor Mackey. All in favor of reconsidering? So that's 4. Did you have your hand up? Okay, so the motion to reconsider passes. Now, the new motion is going to be that there is an unbudgeted capital expense that's going to be funded by donations, some of which have already been raised by the senior center, and the rest is going to be fundraised in a campaign spearheaded by Councilors Mackey and McTaggart. Is that correct? Were you able to get that? Somebody should have been writing. I don't know. All right, Chelsea's got it. We've got the gist of it, because I could attempt to rattle it off again, but I think we'll go while we're hot here and look for calling the question. Don't complicate it, Councilor McTaggart. Yes?
Just to clarify that this is going to be zero net to the town.
Yes.
In the end.
That's in the motion. That it's an unbudgeted capital expense that's going to be fully funded by donations already contributed, and the remaining donations in a funding campaign spearheaded by Councilors Mackey and McTaggart. Yes, Councilor Bien. Don't complicate it.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, through you. I appreciate the donations that have been raised. I appreciate Councilor McTaggart and Mackey stepping forward to raise the money privately or through another campaign. I'm going to vote against it just because I think the principle, favor of the principle of not doing it, and whether it's unbudgeted, whether we do it this way or that way, I'm still against the principle, and that's the reason why I'm going to vote no. Thank you.
I got it. And I'm going to vote for it, even though I agree with you, because practically speaking, we have to move on. So calling the question, all in favor? And it carries. There's one opposed. Phew. You never know which resolution, no matter how small the amount, is going to jump up and bite you. All right. It brings us to item 11, which is Planning and Development Division reviews, and we have a pair of reports on traffic. So 12.1. The Council approved report AR-24-0583 and the recommendation to remove the temporary four-way stop put in place at the intersection of Keating Avenue and First Street West, and that the intersection be restored to its original state. It is further recommended to paint crosswalks to facilitate pedestrian crossings along the east-west sidewalk corridor and install appropriate signage per traffic manual requirements and update the town's traffic bylaw accordingly. I need a mover and seconder on this one. Councillor Behan. Councillor Bernetta. Discussion. Councillor Behan.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, I applaud the administration for coming back with this recommendation and doing this study to find out if the traffic volumes warrant the four-way stop there, and they're going to improve the crosswalk by painting them and all that. My concern is if people don't agree with this recommendation, will they be back again doing impromptu crossing guards that has happened previously, and what would we do about it in that case? Thank you.
It's possible. We'll have to deal with that if it arises, depending upon the circumstances. I will make a suggestion. I hope I don't have to declare myself out of order, but this traffic item and the next traffic item are related in that both of them deal with requests from the public to have an impact on how we worry about our traffic flow within the town of Fort Francis. And we've had several requests in the past. We've had several requests to change speed limits. We've had requests for stop signs here, traffic lights there. What became apparent to me when I was discussing this this morning with the clerk and the CAO is that we really need a policy in place so we deal, and this is relating to what you said, Councillor. We really need a policy in place so that we deal consistently with these requests, because we're going to continue to get them. People may come back. So it might be a reasonable idea. Well, I mean, we'll vote on these tonight, but it might be a reasonable idea to have another resolution where council directs administration to bring back a report on a policy to basically treat these matters consistently. Is there an appetite for that direction to administration? I'm getting stone faces, so I'll take that as a no. Yeah, Councillor Bernetta.
Yeah, I think it would be difficult to create a policy that covered every certain, every particular circumstance. I would feel badly for administration trying to do that. I think we need to take each concern on face value. If it's a big enough concern as this was with, not only one resident, but a number, and it was about, the safety of children. And I really think that's something that we as council should hear about and deal with. And I think administration should be charged with the responsibility of looking into those particular situations and giving us some recommendations around them. So to develop a single policy that says, when the public comes forward with a concern, this is how you're going to deal with it. I can't even imagine how you would possibly come up with a policy that would work for every situation. So I think I would prefer to have things the way they are in terms of people bringing things forward, but I also don't want to restrict the public's ability to, bring those matters forward. So it's a bit of a double-edged sword.
Yeah, I think you remember what I said. I wasn't trying to, and we can't, it's not possible to take every situation into account. What I was saying was we need a policy that's consistent in how we deal with these. And by a consistent policy, I mean a policy that's data-driven. Both this resolution before you, 12.1, and the next resolution, 12.2, both are based on data. And that's what I'm suggesting goes into the policy, that we have a policy that stipulates that changes to traffic bylaws are data-driven. Any appetite for a data-driven policy? I'm getting the stone faces again, so I'm going to say no. So I'm going to go. Mandy, question? Councilor Olson, sorry.
Just more of a comment, I suppose. It's not that I'm opposed to a data-driven policy, but I don't think that data should always be leading the conversation. In the circumstances that we're in with this crosswalk at JW Walker, my children attend that school. I'm an active participant in Kiss and Ride every day. And statistically, right, the evidence is showing that, we're not hitting the marker of the percentages to keep a four-way stop in place. But what I'm seeing on the other side is kids are getting a safe crossing across the road. And removing that is going to, again, impede on the safety of our children in our community. And we're talking like a large number of children are crossing both ways, at those key times of the day. So I don't think data should motivate some of these conversations for sure. But I really do believe that there isn't a pan approach. So I have to agree with Councillor Brunetta on this, that we really have to be mindful of how we're responding to some of these circumstances, especially when we're talking about removal of lights in school areas and now, taking out this four-way stop sign again. I hope that, if council is moving in that direction tonight to remove the four-way stop, that at least it's done after the school year is finished and not abruptly, 1 month before the end of the year when people are now getting comfortable and conditioned to that four-way stop. And I don't know that a single crossroad or a crosswalk is going to be sufficient to keep those children safe in crossing. I do think, if you haven't been to that area, to actually come and see that commotion of 200 plus cars of three ways of traffic. So there's two moving in one direction, one moving in the other, and then alternating roads moving at the same time. It's a traffic jam on the corner, especially on Second. And I think it's something that we really have to look at responsibly here.
Thank you, Councillor Olson. Madam Clerk?
Thank you, Your Worship, through you. Just a comment. I'm listening to Councillor Olson and Councillor Brunetta and the fear in around the policy, but your policy can tie in. What I'm hearing from you is you want consultation. So your policy can address those things as well. So I'm just going to leave that. Thank you.
Okay, now I have to ask them again. So you all heard the clerk, the policy would address some of your concerns because it would include consultation. Any appetite for a policy? And I'm seeing none. So go ahead, Councillor Brunetta.
I just wondered if we must have policies or guidelines of some sort. Obviously, this report was built around guidelines. So I love policies. So I would say yes. I would like to have a policy on those sorts of things. But again, is it necessary to have one? That's my question.
And CAO Rob.
Not to interrupt the policy discussion here. I did want to just highlight for council, both of these reports the amount of staff resources that went into conducting these analysis was substantial. And my thoughts on having a policy in place is that every time someone comes and says, hey, I want a stop sign, we can't put resources in this situation for every single one of those requests. So we've got to have a policy that we can look to decide when we put resources like this in place to do these studies, to do this data-based reporting mechanism. Otherwise, I mean, we're just going to stop grading roads and just count cars for the sake of stop sign requests.
Thank you. Councilor Mackey?
Well, I think we don't need to policy and procedure ourselves to death when common sense can sometimes save the day. And like CAO Rob says, we don't need to have it for everything. We'll tie up administration and they'll never accomplish a single thing because there'd be so many policies and procedures and data collecting that they'll go stir crazy.
I'm policy out. I'm going to call the question. Any further discussion on the question? The resolution before you, moved by Councillor Behan, seconded by Councillor Burnett. I can read it again if you'd like, Councillor McTaggart. On 12.1. Yes?
Your Worship. So the recommendation is we remove the stop sign, but we put in a crosswalk? And how does that make it safer for kids to cross?
Go ahead, Manager Miller.
Chair. So the crosswalks, now, of course, there'd be the painted component of the crosswalk, including indications ahead of the crosswalk per the MTO traffic manual. And as well, there'd be the crosswalk lights that now, the modern ones include flashing lights as you come up to the crosswalk, and they're in fact solar powered, so you don't have to worry about the electrical component of it. I just recently, last week, visited Grand Prairie, Alberta, and I noticed that on several of their city roads, which are 4 lanes, 2 in each direction, they use these crosswalks in a multitude of school zones and residential areas. They're very common. And they are endorsed by MTO Book 12, I believe. Kind of to Councillor Brunetta's point, is there not policies in place? MTO has a whole raft of policies in place, and anything that we create would basically, I believe, reference back to MTO, and we would end up in one of these cycles where they update their policies and then we're suddenly behind. So there are those policies in place. They are very data driven. You have to do the traffic counts, which CAO Rob has alluded to, are very intensive. And then all the subsequent analysis of the data that we get from those counts as well.
Go ahead, follow up.
Just for clarification, painted walk across the road and flashing lights as a warning when children or anybody wants to cross at that particular intersection.
Yes, I believe if you look at the last page of the report, there is a sample of what that intersection might look like.
Okay. Any further questions? Councillor Behan?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Mr. Miller. Is there not already a crosswalk indicated there by painted, but you're talking about the one with full bars across, not just 2 white lines? Thank you.
Through the chair. There is a north-south crosswalk painted there, but there is no east-west crosswalk. There is no east-west beyond Keating. There is no sidewalk, and part of our construction program this year includes building that new sidewalk.
Further questions? Calling the question. All in favor? That's carried. Anyone opposed? One opposed. .2. Recommendation reads that the Council of the Town of Fort Francis approve report number AR-24-0584 and agree to maintain the speed limit on Scott Street at 50 kilometers an hour. Mover and seconder, please. Councilor Bernetta, Councilor Mackey. Any discussion? Seeing none, calling the question. All in favor? That's carried. Any opposed? Mandy, was that in favor or opposed? Okay, thank you. Okay, brings us to item 13, which are bylaws. Recommendation reads that the following bylaws be introduced and read, finally passed, signed by the mayor and clerk, sealed with the corporate seal, and become law forthwith. There are 4 of them. Number 1, that bylaw 89-23C being a bylaw to amend bylaw 89-23 to impose certain user fees, sorting gap marina and storage at MSC for the corporation of the town of Fort Francis. Bylaw 2, that bylaw 34-24 being a bylaw to authorize the levying and collection of a special charge of taxes upon the business improvement area as provided in the Municipal Act 2001 E25 sections 204 to 215. Bylaw 3, that bylaw 35-24 being a bylaw of the town of Fort Francis to adopt a public notice policy. And finally, the 4th bylaw, that bylaw 36-24 being a bylaw of the town of Fort Francis to adopt a facility rental policy. Could I get a mover and seconder on these bylaws, please? Councillor Behan, Councillor Olson. Discussion on the bylaws. Calling the question, all in favor? And no one is opposed, it's carried. Okay, that brings us to item number 14, which is a notice of motion, which was read out, duly read out at the last meeting, and I'm not going to inflict it upon you by reading the entire thing again. I'll just introduce it briefly, and then I'll vacate the chair because I'm going to be moving it, turn the chair over to the deputy mayor. But there's a problem in border water areas which was created by the free trade agreement, which allows American fishers to, American fishing guides to bring American fishers directly from American resorts in the United States into Canadian waters and fish, use our resources, and not necessarily contribute economically at all to Canada. That's the gist of the agreement. The motion is quite large. It's a political motion. What we can do by dealing with it at this level is get the attention of senior government. We need to get the provincial government's attention. We did that at NOMA. We have got the attention of our MP. We also need to get the attention of the federal government even more so. Getting this resolution passed and then getting it out to all of the people that it's directed to, hopefully we'll get some activism and get some lobbying on behalf of this. So I'm going to step out of the chair for Councillor Behan to conduct the vote.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have the chair. And regarding item 14.1, notice of motion, could I have a mover and seconder for that item, please?
I'll move.
Mayor Hallekas, Councillor Mackey. Any discussion on this item? Seeing and hearing none, I'll call the question. All in favor? Consider it carried. Thank you. I relinquish the chair back to Mayor Hallekas.
Thank you. I have the chair. And just before I move on, I do want to acknowledge Scott Hamilton, who's here tonight, and thank Scott for his input and activism on this account on behalf of the local industry guides and tourist camp operators. So thanks, Scotty. So that brings us to item 15, which is a closed session. So I'll put a recommendation on the floor. Recommendation reads that council now meet in camera in order to address a matter pertaining to an expression of interest regarding industrial park land disposition. This comes under 239C, which is a proposed or pending acquisition or disposition of land by the municipality or local board. And it comes under 239I, which is a trade secret or scientific, technical, commercial, financial, or labor relations information supplied in confidence to the municipality or local board, which, if disclosed, could reasonably be expected to prejudice significantly the competitive position or interfere significantly with the contractual or other negotiations of a person, group of persons, or organization. Can I get a mover and seconder to move in camera, please? Councillor McTaggart and Councillor Bernetta. Any discussion? All in favor? That's carried. So we're moving in camera at 7:20. Just a comment to in camera where we will discuss a matter. Once the matter is discussed, we'll come back in open session and comment generally on what was discussed. Thank you. Okay, council is now back in open session. While we were in closed session, we talked about a matter pertaining to disposition or acquisition of property, and there's a resolution coming on that matter. And we also approved minutes from previous closed meeting sessions. So there's a resolution on the floor that says council approval of report AR-24-0586 will align with the administration's recommendation, which is to conditionally approve the disposition of the 5th Street corner piece of surplus land to Tech Truck Services in 2 distinct phases. 1, initial conditional approval for 5 acres. We'll approve the immediate sale of 5 acres to Tech Truck Services for the initial development of a warehouse and truck yard. This phase supports the company's immediate operational needs and allows for manageable development and investment. And 2, we'll grant the first right of refusal on the remaining 5.19 acres. So we'll grant Tech Truck Services the first right of refusal on the remaining 5.9 acres contingent upon the company demonstrating sufficient business growth and development progress. This right is to be exercised within a specified period under the conditions agreed upon by both parties. Could I get a mover and seconder on that, please? Councillor Bernetta, Councillor McTaggart. Any discussion? Calling the question, all in favor? And that is carried unanimously. And that is some good news for the town of Fort Frances. The other resolution coming out of the closed session is that council approve the following closed meeting minutes as presented. The minutes of April 18th, 2024 special council meeting minutes and the minutes of April 22, 2024, the regular council meeting minutes. Mover and seconder, please. Councillor Olson, Councillor Behan. Any discussion on these? Seeing none, calling the question, all in favor? That's carried. No one is opposed. Okay, that brings us to our confirmatory bylaw. The recommendation reads that bylaw 37-24 being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of the Council of the Corporation of the Town of Fort Frances be introduced, read, and finally passed, signed by the Mayor and Clerk, sealed with a corporate seal, and become law forthwith. Mover and seconder, please. Councillor Behan, Councillor Olson. Any discussion? All in favor? It's carried. No one is opposed. Finally, recommendation that having reached the hour of 7:38, this meeting of the Council of the Town of Fort Frances be now closed. Mover and seconder, Councillor Mackey and McTaggart. All in favor? That's carried and no one is opposed. Thank you, councillors, for a fairly intense meeting and for your wise counsel.